This is In Layman's Terms, episode 41. Keep them safe.
Have you noticed the path to success isn't always what you think? In Layman's Terms is designed to help you break through comfort zones, shorten the learning curve, and succeed in business through the power of your relationships. You'll gain valuable insights from top CEOs, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and experts as they share their strategies, mindset, and specific how-tos to help you reach your goals in business and in life. And now your host, Joyce Layman.
Hi, I'm Joyce Layman, and welcome to In Layman's Terms. Today, I'm interviewing Nick Spencer. He's the founder and president of Keep Them Safe, an anti-abduction course for children. Nick is also a lead instructor and project manager for Strategos International, a global training, security, and protection firm. After spending nearly 20 years in the military, police, and security industry, Nick knows what it takes to protect and secure the things you treasure the most. This episode is a combination of Nick's entrepreneurial journey. He also provides valuable insights and safety tips that everyone can apply. Whenever possible, I like to do interviews in person, and today is no different. I'm actually in the Strategos International headquarters. Welcome to the podcast, Nick.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am excited to have you. When we first met and I got the insight on your background, I was fascinated, and I think this particular episode, as far as helping keep people safe, is going to be crucial, especially with all the craziness that's going on in today's world.
Absolutely. I mean, it's daily anymore. Every time you turn on the news or you get on Facebook or any other type of social media, it's in your face, these experiences, these tragedies that are happening. You know, it used to be in some other town or some other country, and now it's here. It's in our own backyard. It's, everything from police officers being shot in small towns to kids being abducted to people walking into schools with guns and churches. And I mean, it's just everywhere now. And I hate to say it, but we're not going back to the good old days. It's never going to be like it was. It's always something that we're going to have to prepare for and think about. And now you start thinking about, for business owners, the liability aspect, not the fact that you just want to protect your people because you love them and you're a good owner and a good president and CEO, but the liabilities that come with it now, that if you're not planning for these things, God forbid the tragedy happens, now there's the fallout from it and the effect. And, as business owners anymore, we can't just ignore it.
Well, what opened my eyes is the car group. We went to Frontier Justice in Lee Summit, and half of us were on the firing range and half of us were in the simulator, and then we switched. And it was interesting because in my 20s, I owned firearms and I was quite proficient, and I was at firing range weekly. I haven't had a gun in a while. And so to walk into the simulator, and they're pulling up all these scenarios, and they said they have over 600 scenarios that they work through. And they're like, okay, you're in a bank. Now you're in a school. Now you're in a church. Now you're in an office. And it just, to me, that's when it hit home for me. And that's when I called you and said, we really need to do this episode.
Absolutely. There's nowhere safe anymore that, like we used to think of.
Exactly. So I know your backstory, but would you share how you got here? Because you've got military. Correct. I'll let you tell it. How about that?
No problem.
Okay.
Well, typical story. Grew up in a small farming community. I graduated from high school, felt the call or the urge to be something bigger, something more than just about myself. And so I enlisted in the Army. I spent 8 years in the United States Army, both active duty and reserve, in a special operations MOS. I was part of a psychological operations detachment where our job was to go in and win the hearts and minds of the people that we were dealing with. By the time I turned 19, I'd been in more countries than I had states. I thought that was just, the average, the national average. It just turns out I grew up poor and we didn't go anywhere. And so got to go all over the world, see a lot of different countries and cultures, really fell in love with traveling and just getting out and seeing the world. I turned 19 in Bosnia. I did 14 months in Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Really enjoyed my military time, but really I felt like it was setting me up for something else. I utilized that training. Once I got back from Iraq, I joined the police department in Blue Springs, Missouri, went to Kansas City's academy, and then I spent 7 years as a police officer and a magnitude of capacities there. Everything from road patrol, bike patrol. We did a youth leadership boot camp for some of our more troublesome kids in the community. I was on the SWAT team for 5 years of that, where I acted as the training supervisor, set up all of our training, make sure all of our boxes were checked and that we were getting the proper training. Did that for a long time and just absolutely loved it. Never thought that it would be more dangerous to be a police officer than it is to be a soldier overseas. But again, those times have changed. And then from there, kind of a unique situation, 2014, a tragic incident occurred in Springfield, Missouri, where a 10-year-old girl was abducted, sexually assaulted, and murdered. And that's when Keep Them Safe was formed. So I was laying in bed, listening to the news as they were explaining the graphic details of finding that poor girl. And I'm laying there literally with tears rolling down my face thinking, man, why does this happen? Why isn't someone doing something about this? There's so many outlets for education anymore. There's no reason for our kids not to be more aware of this. And it was literally like God just laid on my heart and said, hey, I prepared you in the last 15 years through all your military training and all your police training to make a difference. So you can lay there and keep feeling sorry for yourself, or you can get up and put your pants on and go to work and do something to make a difference. And that's exactly what happened. That morning, I called some friends of mine and said, hey, I've got this idea. Let's start training kids how to not be the next victim. And Keep Them Safe was born. I knew it had to have a cool acronym and look good on a t-shirt, kind of like the DARE programs in our school. So that's why we went SAFE. And SAFE stands for Scan, Avoid, Fight, Escape. That's what we want to teach the kids. How to recognize the dangers, how to avoid them if at all possible, how to fight just enough to hurt their attacker, and to get away and get back to the ones that love them the most.
You had an idea, you called friends, and you just started a company. You hadn't ever started a company before, so that's kind of
yeah.
Oh, what the heck, we're just going to do this today.
Yeah, it was definitely a fish out of the water moment for me.
I'm curious, as you were building this, who were some of the influences that actually said, okay, this is how you structure? Because you have to consider you've got the financial aspect of it. You're going to have to start promoting. I mean, there's so much that goes into this. So who's helped you?
We kind of did it backwards, I would think, from the way most people probably envision starting a company, having your capital in place and all your backers and all this stuff. Really, we had a vision. We didn't really have a company at the time. And so what we did is we took our kids and started training them first to make sure that what we were putting out was a quality product. They were test and evaluation field. Take some kids from our local churches, put them together. Hey, does this work? What could we change? What could make it better? The input from the parents. What would you like to see more of? And we first developed the product before we ever worried about launching it as a company.
So you went through your beta phase.
Yeah, we went through a beta phase. And luckily, the principles weren't anything groundbreaking. They weren't anything revolutionary where, hey, we had to come up with this new idea. It was really a lot of the same tactics and principles we used in the police and military world, but just scaled down to the 5 to 13-year-old. What can they understand and what can they do? And so we kind of just did that. We did it basically as just a side project on the weekends. We'd get some kids together on a Saturday. We'd run this 4-hour course and then, see what we could do to make it better. And then it kind of got to the point where, hey, there might be room here for a business, because there are some obviously operating costs and paying instructors. Most of our instructors would donate their time if they could. But, we feel that they're the most valuable resource that we have. And so we want to make sure that we'd never say paid for their time, because I could never give my instructors what they truly deserve. Their hearts are in it for the right reason. And so we kind of launched the company side of it. And then that's where I kind of found myself looking around, because I'd never done anything, in regards to starting a company, managing a company, the financial side of it. Everything came out of pocket at first. It was just, all right, what do we need? And we would take from our savings and build it to that. And so for the first 2 years, there was never a paycheck. There was never a dividend paid to me or anything like that. It was just the only people that got paid were my instructors for their contract rate. And that was it. So I really started reaching out to some people that I knew, people that had ran businesses, people that had the same heart. I wasn't in it. This company was never designed to make me rich or to, make tons of money, but I didn't want it to also be a failure. I didn't understand certain aspects of liability and, do you get an LLC or do you get this? Or, I didn't know. I didn't have that experience. I was just a dumb cop, a dumb soldier who wanted to try to make a difference. And so I reached out to some of the people that I knew had success in this realm. One of my biggest mentors was one of my sergeants in the police department, a man named Colby Lawley. He was a Young Champions, which is a karate organization. He was a Young Champion sensei and had taught thousands and thousands of kids in the Blue Springs School District. So I first reached out to him and say, hey, what am I getting myself into? What do I need to be prepared for? And so he really mentored me and said, hey, these are the things to look for. This is the tough things, and really just kind of helped me stay grounded in that and gave me some great advice. I talked to some, just other friends that I knew had kind of ran some businesses, but my business was so different from your typical box store type of thing. I don't have a product, where I have to worry about packaging and selling. It's all relationship based. And so I just kind of cultivated those relationships, took people's advice, tried to play everything safe, and not get too far ahead of myself, and grew it relatively slowly. And we still are in that growth period, luckily. And so that's kind of the other mentors around me really helped me through those phases. And it's just kind of hard to identify in the moment.
You aligned with Strategos International. How did that come about?
So a good friend of mine, Pastor Barry Young, does some teaching for Strategos, does a lot of their church security training.
And let's back up for a minute, because I should have explained Strategos. So when you're looking at overall everything that they can do, when I was on the website, there's intruder response, there's protection and investigation, which includes security, surveillance, safety training. There's a Strategos University, and then there is military tactical training, along with Keep Them Safe, which is what they do. So anybody, whether they're trying to protect an individual or it's company security or train, it's like they cover it all.
Right. Strategos is a phenomenal company, and anything in the realm of personal security, executive security, workplace, church, anything in that realm, they have resources available, whether it's training, whether it's personal protection for executives. They've cultivated and really put themselves out there in that realm. We do everything from, the World Series in 2015. We were the personal protectors for some of the announcers. We've got some high-end executives around the country that we're working with right now. Won't drop any names just for their own personal protection. But, everything in that regards. Tons of church security. I mean, we just did the Ray-Pec School District for their active shooter training to recertify over 800 of their teachers.
800?
800 in a single day.
Wow.
So we brought them all together into their schools. We recertified them, and that's a great program. They've been with us for almost 5 years now. So they've bought into what we're doing, and it's just a great relationship there. But, we've got the Kansas City public school system. We train all of their SROs, both in firearms and tactics.
And an SRO is?
School Resource Officer.
Okay, there you go. Because I know I'm not the only one sitting here going, I don't know that acronym.
Sometimes the acronyms in our realm is kind of, you can have an entire conversation of just acronyms. So anything in that protective world, guarding what really matters to you, your assets, whether it's physical or personnel, we can provide that answer for you. So through some mutual friends, they'd heard about my program, which, really focuses on keeping the kids safe. And it was kind of something that they were lacking in what they could offer. And so we sat down together and we talked about, hey, I've got this program. You have all these resources and contacts that I don't. Being a small business owner, I hadn't been set in huge boardrooms with, multi-million-dollar companies. They had. And so it was one of those situations where, being a business owner, I was very skeptical of giving my baby away to somebody. You hear these stories of people, take your great idea or your great program and you don't read through the contract well enough. And the next thing you know, 6 months later, they own your company and you're at home on the couch and they're making millions, which I don't know if I've got a multi-million-dollar idea. I'd like to think that eventually it could grow into something like that. But I was very apprehensive to share that, through sitting down with them and seeing where their goals were, what their objectives were. It was obvious right away that they were going to be a good fit for me. Their hearts were in the right place. They wanted the program, not only from a business standpoint, but because they truly believed in it as well. They were already in the business of saving people. Who better to protect than our best asset, our children. And so we partnered our companies together to follow everything under the umbrella of Strategos, to where now we get to still teach kids, but now we have the instructor development side where we're teaching other instructors around the nation how to do this exact same program. And so it's been a wonderful marriage of putting our companies together. And when you are a small business owner and don't have those resources, we've trained over 100,000 people since 2002. And so in 15 different countries. Well, Nick Spencer and Keep Them Safe doesn't have that. I don't have that resource available or that experience. And so when I partnered with Mark and Vaughn, the two owners of Strategos, they were so open and just so willing to share what they had learned and say, hey, you know what? It's scary out there. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble really quick. Let us help you cultivate your business and grow it and, both be successful together with it. And so, I've kind of really trusted in them and leaned on them to show me the way. And that's been probably the biggest blessing for me is just having somebody that's been through the fire already to say, hey, this is how we did it. This is where we were successful. And these are some of the deficiencies that we had, or even some of the losses that we took. And they can kind of steer me around some of that to where, it
shortens the learning curve.
It does exponentially. So that's been really nice.
I'm curious because the audience listening to this, you're going to have individuals, entrepreneurs, you're also going to have folks on the corporate side as well. So if somebody's looking at growing their business or they've got an idea, what's one of the things that comes to mind that if you could do it again, that you would do differently?
Well, I've been really lucky and not had any huge setbacks. Again, when you don't have production side of things and I'm not managing hundreds if not thousands of people, I keep my circle pretty small. I think if I could do it all over again, though, I would probably lean towards pushing it a little faster, a little harder. When it's something that you create, even though you believe in it, part of you says, you know what, you're not good enough to do this. Like this is for somebody else. And so I think just believing in myself a little bit more, knowing that, hey, what you have, there's some legitimacy to it and not being so reserved. Because I think most of us, one of our, if you're anything like me, your biggest fear is failure, or being a failure. And so a lot of times it really holds us back of doing something great. And so I think if I would have, stepped out there a little sooner and really said, you know what, no, this is what I'm going to do, I probably would have been here to this point a little sooner. But I think the timing's been pretty amazing, just kind of the way things have fallen. But just believe in yourself and get out there. And if you're not right or if your product's not right, it's going to wash out quickly. You're going to know that it's not. But if you have something that you truly believe in, go after it. Don't sit back and doubt yourself like I did the first probably year or two.
That's great advice. One of the things, though, I appreciate when you were talking about it earlier is you knew that you had a training that worked. So it was, how do you take it? And you basically did a beta test on your kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your friends' kids, and just trying to make sure that it supported, that everything was there, right? Yeah. So if you needed to tweak something before you actually presented it to a paying client, I think that's awesome. Right. I'm sure there's parents probably listening to this wanting some tips. So what are some things that you might share to help just that they could tell their kids as far as awareness or anything? Of course, the ideal is to get them in one of your classes.
Sure, of course.
But just some things to generally be aware of.
Right. The main idea is to protect kids. That's the whole reason this thing started. We hope parents understand just how serious this is. And I don't think parents grasp how often this occurs. There's over 58,000 non-family abductions in the U.S. every year.
58,000?
58,000. The statistics are staggering when you start looking at it. And, people think of abduction versus missing, and we get really confused on that. If I'm a missing person, that means someone has recognized that I'm gone and has reported it to the authorities. There's over 450,000 missing persons reports taken in the U.S. every year. Missing could be, though, I just got mad at my parents and didn't come home.
Right.
I wanted to go over to my friend's house and I rode the wrong bus home and someone has realized I'm not where I'm supposed to be.
Versus an actual abduction.
An abduction can happen and only be moments long. Young girl's walking home from school. Someone grabs her, pulls her into a wooded area or in a car assaults her and then lets her go before mom or babysitter even realizes that she's not home yet. We need to be able to separate the two. We focus on missing persons and Amber Alerts and things like that. And yes, they're very important and very serious, but the abduction and what happens in that process is the most traumatic. What we're trying to do is prevent the secondary crime scene. The primary crime scene is where the abduction occurs or is attempted. The secondary crime scene is the bad one. And that's unfortunately where they usually find the child. And they're not any better off than when they were taken. So the biggest thing for parents, though, is you have to talk to your kids about these situations. We've done a really great job as parents, if anyone's like me, of making our kids very social. We tell kids from the time they can talk, look the man in the eye when he speaks to you, shake his hand. This is mom or dad's friend, so-and-so. Be social with them. But we've done a horrible job of explaining to them when it's not acceptable. One of the best examples we get is, I'm in Walmart with my son. I see some guy from maybe high school or college or an old job that I had that I would never trust my child to be alone with. But because we're cordial, I interact with them. Hey, how you been? How's the family? How's the job? Whatever the case may be. And then we split and go our separate ways. Well, the next day, that same guy sees my kid at the park or at the bus stop or somewhere else. And he says, hey, aren't you Nick's son? And now my son has recognized, oh, well, dad talked to this guy, so he must be okay. He must be okay. We've done a horrible job of explaining. Mm-hmm. So what we've done at Keep Them Safe is redefine stranger. And we hear the word stranger danger and we just don't use it in our company because there's no good definition to what that is. And there's no program truly to support that. For us, a stranger is anyone your parents haven't given you permission to leave or be alone with. So think about it. That could be anybody. That could be people that you know very well. But unless my mom or dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever I'm with say, hey, it's okay to go ahead and get in that car with that person, we're going to treat them as a stranger. And we're going to go through the exact same protocol and procedure no matter what. A lot of these times, it's not the stereotypical kidnapping. It's not the guy with the ski mask that hasn't targeted your daughter. It's somebody in the school district. It's somebody in the church, somebody from the neighborhood. Most of the time, these are homegrown type of taggers, people that you've seen somewhere, not necessarily just to pull up with a van, grab a kid and go. So we want to prepare the kids for every situation.
Well, the other thing too, and I saw videos a couple of weeks ago out on Facebook, and it was a group that they actually set these up where they were communicating with young girls online, and then they had the parents in the van or in the car, and you watch these girls come out and get into a vehicle with somebody they met online, and the parents are there just beside themselves. Absolutely. Because they never thought their daughter would do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of great videos out there that show that exact same thing. One that comes to mind is a guy who takes a dog to a park and he tells the mom, hey, I'm going to see if I can lure your kid away with this dog. And the mom is adamant. There's no
not going to happen, right?
In less than 4 seconds, this kid walks away with this guy and his dog. It's that simple. Kids are so naive. They don't look at the world like we do. They haven't been scarred. They haven't, seen just the brutality that this world can offer. And that's what we love about our kids is their innocence. Everything's through rose-colored glasses with them, to where, as an adult, you perceive danger differently. You have that discernment where if something's right or wrong. Kids don't. They're trusting. Why would anybody want to hurt me? I'm just a 6-year-old. So they don't see it the same way. So it's really easy to manipulate and prey on that innocence. And we have to do, as parents and as a community, do a better job of setting themselves up for success by teaching them what is appropriate, what is a good interaction with an adult. That's the toughest thing for us to conquer, because the kids just want to be social. They want to be nice. And we've told them, be nice, be nice, be nice. Talk to adults. They just don't know when not to.
Well, I like that. Redefine stranger danger. So shifting for a minute to more of a corporate environment, what do people need to be aware of? Because literally anybody can walk in. We've seen stories on the media. What are just some general awarenesses, mistakes that you see people making? A simple one is people have their face buried in their cell phone walking across a parking lot. So if you think about public places or within an organization, if an executive needs to protect their employees, what's a tip for a company?
Well, you have to be very proactive in your training. What we found with these people that are attacking different churches, schools, workplaces, is that they have a lot of preparation. They're going out and they're doing their homework on what past incidents have worked. And so we say if they're going to be, committed and prepared, we have to be even more committed and more prepared because it's a reactionary force. So one of the biggest things is training your employees what to do in this situation. What we found through statistical data and just a lot of case study from different past events is in the lack of direction, people will self-direct. And sometimes that fight or flight reaction is great and can get you to a safe place, but sometimes it's the absolute opposite of that. Where if you would have locked yourself inside your office and kind of bunkered down in there, you would have had a lot better results. Instead, we think, I have to get out of the building, and I run into the fire versus stay safe somewhere without it. So we have a responsibility as employers to make sure our employees know what to do in these situations. One of the biggest things for employees, though, is if you see something, say something now. If a coworker comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm in this really bad domestic violence type of relationship, and I feel like the other side of it could come here and potentially try to hurt me." We want to respect people's privacies as much as we can and be a good shoulder for them to lean on. If you think that there's a possibility of violence in your workplace, you have a responsibility to alert the people around you and your employer so that they can take a proactive stance on it. We're not trying to embarrass or shame anybody, but a secret like that could get people killed. And so we want to be proactive in both our communication, but definitely in our training.
This is all great advice. I'm trying to take notes and take it all in as you're talking. Of course, there's going to be links on the website. So if people want to access and get more information, it needs to be there. I'm curious, all this leading into, you've seen a lot of stuff over your career, military, police, just within Keep Them Safe and Strategos. So my favorite question is, what's been an oh shit moment? And we've had such a wide variety. So,
Sure.
And in fact, even Cam Bishop, who I interviewed, when he was CEO of a company, they thought a guy had walked in the building with a firearm and it wasn't, and the police were called and the whole thing. So, they've ranged, but I'm curious what comes to mind for you.
Well, obviously in my background being police and military, there's been several, much more than your average company owner or executive probably would have to deal with. Spending 14 months in Iraq, you got to see a lot of those moments unfold, sometimes daily. As a police officer, you're always putting yourself in those situations. And so you see a lot of those. Now that I've kind of stepped away from that aspect of it, for me, a lot of times when I see it, it's not necessarily a moment like that for myself, but I can see companies moving towards moments and they haven't done a good job of protecting their employees from that moment. I've walked into some of these great, very successful companies, and I look around and, they've tried to breed this atmosphere of we're all one big happy family, and that's great, but they haven't done anything to say, hey, what happens when somebody in that family decides to leave or decides to come in and hurt somebody, or we have a domestic violence spillover. And so for me, my job when we do these assessments, that's another part of Strategos, is we can come to different companies and do on-site assessments and try to identify any deficiency for you. I walk into some of these places and say, this is a glaring thing that if they don't do something to correct it, is going to get someone hurt. I try to forecast those as much as possible for people. Say, hey, this is where you're most vulnerable. Or if you're not doing this, you're going to have one of those moments that, you can never rebound from.
I hate to ask, have you ever seen one of those happen within an organization where it's like you knew and they just didn't get prepared in time? I'm hoping the answer is no.
The answer is no. Luckily, we've not. But it seems like a lot of times when we get the phone call to come help, whether it's for doing on-site security after an incident has happened, which happens a lot, or there's something that could have gone tragically wrong, and now they're trying to play catch up. Unfortunately, for you as a company, for a CEO or a human resources manager, whoever you might be, when we have to come in those situations, the idea has already been planted or the fear is already there, and your environment, your workplace is already changing in front of your eyes, and now you're trying to react to an event. And it's never good to have to react in that way. You always want to be proactive. And so fortunately, no, I can't think of anywhere we've gone in and said, hey, if you don't change this, and then it happens. Most of the time, people are pretty reasonable and understand, if they're calling us, they want the change. They want to protect themselves and their employees. And so luckily we haven't had any I told you so type of moments, and I hope that we never do.
I hope the same as well. Well, I'm curious, what's been one of the biggest comfort zones? I know I just shifted gears from where we were at, but you think about what you accomplished. You've seen some bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You're protecting clients now from things. But when you think about just those mental hurdles that you've had to overcome, and maybe somebody was telling you, Nick, you need to do this, and you're giving pushback to them. So I'm curious, does anything come to mind?
Well, the biggest for me is the transition between the police world and then being a business owner. In that time, I actually took a job in the union doing construction and was making more money than I'd ever made in my life. Had better benefits than I'd ever had. I was only working 4 days a week. And for me, that was a very comfortable place to be in. That security of knowing that paycheck is going to be there every Friday, that I've got great benefits, a pension. I mean, if I just put my head down for the next 20 years, everything's going to work out pretty good. So for me, that was a big mental hurdle that I had to get over, is leave the security of that Monday through Thursday, 10-hour day, paycheck every Friday, is to leave that and trust in where I thought this company could go and do that. So to me, that was the biggest one. Like, there was a lot of prayer involved, and, God, are you sure this is what you want me to do? Because I hear what you're saying, so it was kind of just stepping out in faith and knowing that it was going to work out, and that this wasn't just about me, that there was, more involved. And so that was probably the biggest mental mindset that I had to get over, is just trusting in the fact that I was doing what I was called to do. So that was a big one.
So I asked you about influences earlier, and in the process of building, you said that you had reached out and just talked to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. How else have you tried to build, or I should say, built your network of connections?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just weird how some of these things just kind of come back around. You and I met through a volunteer opportunity that we were both part of through the Make-A-Wish Foundation, trying to make a kid's day a little bit better. It was a great experience, and a lot of it has really just been word of mouth and opportunities and experiences. We think, hey, I have to have, my LinkedIn needs to have 10,000 connections. And if I'm not posting something on Facebook every 8 minutes, then I'm not getting the word out there. And a lot of it is just actually getting out there and being vulnerable, not hiding behind your computer, and going out and meeting people. And a lot of people are looking for the same thing that I am. They're looking for those connections. They're looking for those resources. They're looking for somebody that can give them an edge, but they're also looking for those relationships, both, in life and in business. And so really for me, the biggest thing that I was taught was life is about relationships. That was some of the best advice that I was given. And so instead of just going into a meeting and saying, hey, I'm Nick with Keep Them Safe, getting to know who your client is, getting to know what their goals and their vision is, and just seeing what you can do to help them. A lot of times we go into business, it's like, hey, how can you help me? But if you kind of flip that around and say, hey, how can I help you? What's going to better serve you? And a lot of times doors open up that you weren't even expecting. I mean, who would have thought that we'd be sitting here doing this podcast?
I know. When we met over Noah's Ride, having fun with cars,
hanging out with a bunch of supercars, and now we're here. So
it was like the best day ever.
It was a great day, and again, with this partnership with Mark and Vaughn at Strategos, it was just kind of one of those deals of putting myself out there and them wanting to know, hey, what can you offer? But this is what we can also offer you and help you get to the next level. And so there's a lot of trust involved in things like that. Sometimes you just got to jump on it, not let it get away.
Exactly. As I'm sitting here, I'm talking to you in the conference room, there is a sign behind you that says servant's heart with a warrior's mindset.
Yes, that is kind of the credo of what we're looking for, both in employees of Strategos, but also in the people that we train. A lot of times we're going into a corporate environment or a church environment, and it used to be anytime these bad things happened, what'd we do? We sat back and we waited for the police to get there because they were the heroes that were going to come right in. Well, what we found out is that when seconds matter, police are just minutes away. And what we do through Strategos and Keep Them Safe is empower people to be the true first responder, to stand in that gap and make a difference for the people around them. And that's what we look for, is that warrior mindset. You don't have to be a Navy SEAL or, Army Ranger or a police officer or a firefighter to make a difference. You just have to have it made up in your mind that today's the day that I'm going to do something to make a difference. But then also that servant's heart, are you doing it for the right reasons? we find a lot of people do stuff just for the cool t-shirt, or for more likes on Facebook. And, if that's what drives them, that's what drives them. But when we're trying to select the people that we work with, that's what we're looking for. Someone with a servant's heart that wants to do it for someone else, the absence of self, but with that same mindset of I'm going to do whatever I have to do to protect the people that matter to me or the people around me. And so it's kind of just a mindset that we've taken on and what we truly look for in some of our champions.
John Kionis, there's a show and it's What Would You Do?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
they set up different scenarios. And it's interesting because sometimes you just see people turn a blind eye and then other times people are jumping in. And last week posed an interesting scenario for me. I just left a meeting and I was out at Metcalf at 110th, right by I-435.
Mm-hmm.
And right in the middle of the intersection, bad car wreck happens right in front of me. 3 of us jump out. Nobody could go anywhere because I'm the first car in line, right?
Sure.
But the 3 of us jump out and it's like, what do we do? I was on the phone calling the police. The other woman, we're all trying to do that. But it's interesting how many people, because that's such a busy intersection, just were in such a hurry that it's like, I just want to get there, right? Nobody was seriously hurt. Airbags went off. Cars weren't drivable. But still, you don't know what's happening when you open a door. And because I'm not that big of a person.
Right. You're definitely not.
And I don't think that, if I had to, I couldn't take on, a group of people. But yet, to me, it's just how can you get involved and not have your face in a cell phone? And sometimes it's watching somebody about to walk off, they're walking on a sidewalk and they're going to trip. It's like, stop, little things. It can be small things.
It can absolutely be the small things. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, it could be huge.
Exactly.
It could be you sitting at your cubicle at the desk when somebody walks in and pulls a gun, and you can sit there or hide under your desk, which we never advise to do. Or you can stand up and risk something. You don't get anything in this world without risk. Nothing comes without risk. And maybe that risk is you standing up and grabbing somebody that's got a gun that wants to shoot up in the office. But the reward for that is how many lives did you just save? And are you going home to see your family that night? And, so it's all measurable, whether it's driving past a car wreck or standing in that gap, a teacher that's going to protect your classroom from some maniac. It's all relative to whatever your day looks like.
Exactly. How can people find you? As mentioned, I'm going to put the links on the website.
Sure.
So what's the best place? Because there are several websites when you look at everything that Strategos International does. So where do we need to send people?
Yeah, intruderresponse.com. We'll have all of our resources there, whether it's for workplace violence, church security, personal protection. You can go to that website. Anything in the realm of the anti-abduction stuff, we have keepthemsafeus.com. Obviously, there's all kinds of links to contact us, things like that. Both companies are available through Facebook. Strategos has a great Twitter page, things like that. And so we're constantly putting out stories, giving examples of situations that have happened, what's worked, what's not. There's newsletters that you could subscribe to get information on how to, better protect your company, your church, your school, things like that. So yeah, we're available through all your standard social media platforms and look forward to contacting anybody.
Speaking of, how can we add value back to you?
For us, it's just about, like I said, word of mouth, people getting out there and saying, hey, this is a program that I really think that we can benefit. Whether it's, you're sitting at your desk and you realize, hey, our company doesn't do anything like this. We don't have any type of intruder response. We don't do anything to make sure that we're safe. Start a grassroots program in your community and say, hey, what are we going to do to keep our kids from being the next victim? We don't want that 58,001. So what are we going to do to be proactive? That's probably the biggest thing is you can be a mouthpiece for the people around you and say, hey, we need to do something. We need to be proactive. Again, get your kids signed up for these classes. We're constantly adding kids classes to our website. We're adding classes it seems like every day. I taught the active shooter intruder response course for teachers, I think 6 times in the last 2 weeks. So as school starts back up, school districts are being very proactive and getting them there. But, ask your school districts, hey, what are your teachers doing to protect my kid?
That's a great question.
Absolutely.
Well, we do fire drills.
Yeah.
Tornado.
And that's kind of one of those things that we talk about is, I believe the statistic is we haven't lost a child in a school fire since 1955. So we're doing a really good job of keeping our kids from being injured in school fires. But what are we doing for today's threat? for today's common problem. What are you doing as a district or as a hospital or whatever to protect the people? I mean, great. We focused on making our schools fireproof, and it's worked great. Now we need to worry about the 2017 threat, not the 1955.
Very much so. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, what's next for you? What's in the works?
Well, our instructor level program has really taken off, and that's been great to get more people, because I can only teach so many kids on a Saturday. And so for me, I need to share this program with as many different outlets as possible, whether it's school resource officers, whether it's community centers, whether it's just a baseball coach that wants to be more proactive in his community and protect the kids that he's coaching. We're really looking for people that want to host different courses, whether that's church security, school, active shooter stuff. So we're looking for more partners out there to bring these programs to you. And when you do that, we have some different financial opportunities for people that host that give them a break and bring that program to them. So there's, we can work with almost any budget to make certain things happen. We have online training. We have in-person training where we'll send some of the best instructors in the nation to you, no matter where you're at. If you're listening to this in Kansas City or you're listening to this in Canada, we've been in 15 different countries so far, so we can take our program anywhere.
Well, that was one of the things that I wanted to ask is, depending on where somebody's going to pick this up. So 15 countries and counting then.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Another big program that we just rolled out in 2017 is our Prevail program. Back in 2016, we worked with a training group. We went up to Des Moines, Iowa, and did a 6-day film shoot where we basically created a workplace violence scenario where a shooter came in and is on the rampage. Through that, we built a training module. So we have all kinds of virtual options out there. So for the CEO, for the human resource person that's trying to figure out how am I going to train 2,000 employees and not, have them come in, we have an answer for that. So through a virtual training thing where we'll put them through scenarios, we'll put them through, give them all their options of what to do in these situations. We've built an amazing program that I believe wholeheartedly in. It's a 14-minute long docudrama type of situation where we've recreated what it's truly like. I mean, we had, some great actors from the Midwest come in, real firearms, walking through business offices, shooting people up. I mean, it's one of those that draws you in both emotionally and physically, like, oh man, what am I going to do if that's here? So it's a great training module, a great resource, especially for some of the larger companies that just can't quite figure out how to get this training to all their employees. So,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, we're really happy with its success these days.
Well, and going back to, as I mentioned, the frontier justice, when we were going through the different scenarios, and I'm sure it wasn't elaborate as what was done with Prevail, but still, it really made you stop and think.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And those same trainings that you're talking about are what police academies and police departments all across the nation are still using. A lot of times our police are under attack for making split-second decisions that will be reviewed for months and months, even years in regards to legality. If you're the manager of any type of situation and you come in and you decide, hey, I'm going to step up and defend my people, you need to understand which of these situations are a lethal situation, which one is a call the cops and wait situation. So there's so much that most people kind of take for granted in those situations.
Well, there was one at the end. We'd gone through this. I'd already been on the firing range with everybody, and then we're in the simulator, and we accidentally shot a police officer because he was in plain clothes. Mm-hmm. And the simulator gave you an opportunity to talk to them, to get them to put down their firearm and do whatever. But I don't know if it was just that got a little trigger happy. And then we went, could we do one more? Because we don't want to end by having shot a police officer thinking he's a bad guy.
Absolutely.
And this is something where it amazes me. And I've gone through Krav Maga. I've done a couple of self-defense courses with Krav Maga. Would love to do Krav Maga all the time. It's incredible. But it goes back to, you have to do something consistently before you're going to actually react to it. Right. Otherwise, you could freeze. Going back to what you said about fight or flight, you're not going to be able to respond in that situation.
Right.100%.
having these virtual trainings and something that people can access so it can get ingrained a little bit more, I think is crucial.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really drive home in any of my trainings, whether it's with kids, whatever professional field you want to put out there, is that if you're not already planning something in your head, what is my response going to be? You're setting yourself up for failure. And what I'm really focusing on is if-then thinking. If this happens while I'm at work, then what am I going to do? Or if this happens while I'm at home, then what am I going to do? And putting yourself in those different situations. I tell people I've been in thousands and thousands of gunfights in my life. And, people kind of look back at me like, really not likely that you've been in 1,000 gunfights. And I say, physically, I've only been in a handful. And each one was just as scary as the other one. But mentally, I've put myself in thousands of different situations to where, what happens when I'm in Quick Trip and the guy in front of me pulls a gun on the clerk? What am I going to do then? But what if it's the guy behind me and he pulls the gun on me? Or what if it's when I walk to my car and then that's when it happens. But then I'm like, oh, well, what happens when I'm at home tonight laying in bed and someone kicks open the front door? But what if it's the back door? Or what if it's the basement window? So right there, in just one trip to Quick Trip and home, I put myself in 6 different gunfights on what would I do. The most important thing that I'm trying to stress with that is you don't want the actual event to be the first time that you visit it. You want to have that plan in your head to where if you do find yourself in that situation, you've been there before mentally.
Right.
And now we're just going to fall back on, hey, this plan worked pretty good in my head. I'm going to try to exercise what I've been planning mentally for the last year, 5 years, 10 years. Hopefully you never need it, but the day that you need it, you don't want that to be the first day that you've ever had to visit that situation.
And as we're sitting here having this conversation, I'm curious, do you have a way for individuals to go through your programs as well?
Yeah, we have different courses that we offer for personal protection.
I'm just, asking for myself.
Absolutely. We have personal protection classes for that. We have firearms training. CCW training we feel is important. That gets everybody licensed and they get to fire their 25 to 50 rounds in their one-day course. Well, with my background, I've fired hundreds of thousands of rounds and trained, months and months and months of actual training time. And I still don't feel that I'm at the level of excellence that I need to be. So that one person, that one day, they're not where they need to be. That just means they're licensed with the state. And so we offer an advanced CCW course where you'll fire over 1,500 rounds. It's the exact same training I used to put my SWAT team through. Some of the same movement techniques, some of the same drawing and firing techniques. And so those are all options available. If there's something in the personal security world, we have an answer for it. We have a resource for you, whether it's individual, as a company, as a group, as a church, we can provide you with the resources you need to, at least be even with the threats that are out there. We'll never be ahead of them because they get to pick the time and place.
Right.
We're always reacting to it. But again, if there's something that we can help you and your business to feel more secure, then we can come up with something for you.
Well, you certainly have my head spinning about some things and scenarios. As we're winding down, does anything else come to mind that you want to share?
There's just so much to it. This is one of those topics that once you scratch the surface, your head is going to be
there's an iceberg. We're like sitting on the iceberg right now.
Absolutely. And the more you get into it, the more at first you're going to feel overwhelmed and say, man, I'm not that prepared. I don't know what I would do in this situation. And it can be overwhelming. What I like to say in those events is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You just take it as it comes. You could what if yourself to insanity. And the realistic aspect of it is the frequency isn't that high in these events. We're not talking about somebody coming into a school and shooting 35 kids, every week, every month, even every year. But what we're trying to plan for is the impact. If we can mitigate the impact, decrease the situation and the violence that's done in it, then that's what we have to truly prepare for. Because no matter if it's one child lost or if it's 33 people like Virginia Tech, the impact for that one person that's involved is just as great for the other 33. Your life will never be the same. Anyone that I've ever talked to that's been through a critical situation like this, their life is divided into 2 parts: before the shooting and after the shooting. It's not when my kids were born. It's not when I was married. It's not when I graduated high school. It's not when I retired. It was literally before the shooting and after the shooting, and then everything else gets lumped into those 2 categories. And that's what we're trying to prevent.
This has been fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Truly my pleasure. My pleasure. I love doing it. I'm fortunate enough to do a job that I absolutely love and that I know is making a difference in the world. And that I don't think it gets much more rewarding than that.
Oh, you are truly making a difference in the world.
Well, thank you. I hope so.
That's all for now. You can find the rest of the In Layman's Terms podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. Be sure to subscribe for automatic updates. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Joyce Layman fan, on Instagram and Twitter at Joyce Layman. I'm on LinkedIn at Joyce Layman. And of course, you can always drop me a line through my website at joycelayman.com. If you have ideas for a great guest, feel free to reach out. And of course, I always love to get your feedback on the episodes. Stay tuned for episode 42.